So many years ago, I used to work in Hollywood, and I worked on reality television shows. And I wasn't any kind of a big player or anything like that. I was lowest level production assistant usually on most of these shows. One of the television shows I worked on is called Hell's Kitchen, and I worked on that show for 2 seasons. And at the time I worked the late shift, so I was usually there really late after we actually recorded, and I was just doing whatever they wanted me to do as far as production assistant work goes. This is a picture that I posted to my Facebook about 7 years ago now. But I was actually working on set the night they took this picture. And the guy that took the photo was an electrician. He was working the late shift as well. He was doing what many of us did that worked on these television shows, going around and just taking different pictures of the set, sometimes the signs, just personal photos to share with friends and family. So here's a picture he took through a couple of glass doors of the Hell's Kitchen logo. And just beyond that logo was the actual set to Hell's Kitchen. That's where they had all the tables set up, people would come in and dine, they also had the kitchen. So I'm not sure if you've seen the image yet, but take a look right up there, kind of on the right hand side, and you'll see something staring back at you. And it looks very much like a demonic face. Now once again, I can assure you that this isn't some kind of a scam or a hoax or anything like that. I was shown this picture maybe a couple minutes after it was shot because a lot of people were freaking out on set after he took this pic. So he didn't set this up, he didn't create it, this hadn't been photoshopped. I myself was there the night they took the picture, and all of us just went crazy over this thing and started sharing it with each other. In a moment, I'm going to show you a picture, something more recent, that I think potentially they could have caught another spirit on camera. And it's a very, very creepy picture. But I wanted to share this with you first, and my backstory to it as well, just so you understand, as far as I'm concerned, that this stuff is very real, and there is such a thing as spirit photography, and oftentimes these things will show up. If you look closely, you'll see those are 2 glass doors. One of them is open, the other one is shut, and that's where we're getting that image. That's where we're getting that, you may call it a reflection or whatever, but somehow that demonic face showed up in that glass. And once again, this is not a mask, it's not a Photoshop job, it's nothing like that. This was real, this was organic, this actually happened. Now looking back, I'm really not that surprised considering the name of the show and the kind of imagery that is all around the show. Hell's Kitchen, right? And there are such things as portals. There's ways to allow these kinds of entities in. And I've talked in the past on some chat shows and also in some videos about how these entities can attach themselves to physical objects. So once again, keeping that in mind, no big surprise that we may find some of these kinds of things floating around Hell's Kitchen. And this happened, once again, many years ago, but this is around the time I started waking up to a lot of things, waking up to the reality of spiritual warfare. And then, of course, all the New World Order stuff, the Illuminati. As far as I'm concerned, this right here is one of the most legit pics I've ever seen when it comes to spirit photography. So I certainly wouldn't suggest you get into spirit photography. You can look up the subject and you'll see that this has been with us for a very, very long time. And there's actual people out there, typically ghost hunters or paranormal hunters, people like that, who are taking these pictures all the time. There's specific techniques they can use to actually draw these images out. It's not faking, it's not photoshopping, it's none of that. Like I said, there's a real science to this, and you can look into it if you're interested in finding out more. But as for me, typically I think any kind of spiritual manifestation like this is most likely a demonic interdimensional. Some of the methods that people use with spirit photography is they'll use water, smoke, sometimes dry ice, even super high ISO imaging with cameras that literally can see in the dark without using a flash. So the images I'm sharing with you right here are from a man who's been doing spirit photography for a really long time. If you're interested, you can Google ITC, in capitals, ITC spirit photography. He explains his methods, and he also shows just how long he's actually been doing this. And many of his photos and a lot of his research has actually been profiled on a lot of paranormal shows and also in many mainstream articles, including the Huffington Post and many more. Now, of course, this right here is an example of a faked photograph or something that was created. It's simply a double exposure, and this photo right here is from the 1800s. And you can see that there's obviously a really big difference between what we're looking at before and what we're looking at right now. So if you're not a spiritual person, if you have no spirituality, if you don't believe in life on the other side, then I know this stuff's really hard to grasp. But once again, please research it for yourself. Here's another picture from ITC. And the photographer once again reassures us that this is not an image of himself, and an image of him as well, and it's definitely not the same guy. This is another one of those effects that he was able to create and capture what he believes to be a spirit on film. And the roots of spirit photography can be traced back to the 19th century. During the 1850s and 60s, many photographers were experimenting with new effects such as stereoscopic images and double exposure. So it's easy to understand how some people just don't believe anything, right? Because even back then, even though it wasn't called photoshopping, they were essentially able to do kind of the same thing. But that certainly doesn't explain all images of spirit photography. There's an English priest, and he was also a medium. His name was William Stanton Moses. He's considered one of the earliest investigators of spirit imagery. He belonged to a club called the Ghost Club, which was founded in 1862 and believed to be the oldest paranormal investigation and research group in the world. He once said by 1875 he had examined over 600 alleged spirit photographs, and his view was that there were probably no more than a dozen that might pass muster as something supernatural. And he said that there are people out there who would recognize a sheet and a broom as their dear departed. So what you're looking at right here is one of the most famous spirit photographs ever taken. In 1891, Sybil Corbett was taking a photograph of the library at Combermere Abbey in Cheshire, England. Sat in the chair in the foreground of the shot is the faint outline of a man's head, collar, and right arm. You can see it right there, kind of on the left. So it's said to be the ghost of Lord Combermere, who had recently died in a riding accident and who was being buried at the time this picture was taken. Now, the photographic exposure took an hour, leading many skeptics at the time to suggest that a servant had actually entered the room and briefly sat in the chair while the exposure took place. However, most household staff claimed that they were at the Combermere's funeral at the time, and all of this was vetted. And now we're going to take a hard left turn. Welcome back to 2017. There's a method to the madness here, and there's a reason I'm showing you these things before I show you the picture I want to show you. So the image you're looking at right here actually came from a story that went national just several months ago. And you know they always have the kind of jumbotrons at these baseball games, but as the camera was panning around, it saw this group of young ladies, and every single one of them was sitting there with their phones, taking selfies of themselves, not even paying attention to the baseball game. And this went on for several minutes. They were all completely unaware of where they are or what was going on. They were so focused on themselves and on taking pictures, they had no idea they were even up on the jumbotron. This is an example of the selfie culture. Our world has hit a level of narcissism on so many levels, it's unbelievable. And at times when I see things like this, I feel like it's all just about to bust. So we have selfie culture, we have massive narcissism all around the planet right now, and we also have spirit photography. So now let me show you this. And truly I could share with you dozens of stories similar to this one right here. High school cheerleader 14 dies while posing for selfies with friends on the beach during spring break after the log they were playing on rolled over, pinning her underneath. Now this isn't to say anything bad about the dead, but really it's all about vanity. Even in this case, this young lady was so focused on herself, so focused on taking her selfies, that she was unaware of the danger she was in, and she died because of it. So I stumbled on this news story, and I haven't seen any follow-up at all, but spooky snap, woman finds demonic face staring at her from her Snapchat selfie. Rachel Gardner, 22, had used one of the flower crown filters to make her selfie look extra Snapchat worthy. She wound up getting much more in this picture than she'd bargained for. So here's the main image. This is the young lady right here in question, and this was her Snapchat filter. You can see the flowers and all this, right? But the reason she freaked out is because after she took the picture, she saw something else, which is right down here, and it appears to be on her neck. And here's that image. So we explore a lot of really strange phenomena here on the channel, and I get that some people are going to automatically assume this is a double exposure, but when you read this story, the young lady says that she didn't do anything at all like that. It was just the flower image that she put over her picture, and then this right here showed up underneath. And out of all the pictures of double exposure I looked at, I saw nothing else like this. So keeping in mind the history of spirit photography, the actual experience I've had with spirit photography by accident, what I saw with Hell's Kitchen, and looking at this, also keeping in mind the selfie culture, the narcissistic culture we're in. This is a culture of narcissism. This is a selfie culture, and I know you guys have seen this, especially if you're on Instagram. There's women all across the planet, and men, who do nothing but take pictures of themselves all day long, even on Facebook, and they're constantly posting images of themselves. And this is certainly, in my opinion, an example of self-worship. So keeping all of this in mind, the idea of spirit photography and how spirits can show up in photography. Also the idea of self-worship, this narcissistic selfie-taking culture we're in. My question to you is, could this be an image of the Jezebel spirit? When I first saw the image, that's the first thing that popped into my mind. I wonder if this young lady, without realizing it, actually caught an image of the Jezebel spirit residing within. And this is a spirit. It can be anywhere, at any time. So as I read more into the story, this young lady vehemently denies that she did any kind of tinkering with this. She didn't create that image on her neck. There's nothing like that. You can even see that the image on her neck, it definitely looks demonic. It looks evil, right? And it's not exactly the same as her face. It has a very sharp nose, you can see there, and it's got a really evil looking grin flashing its teeth. And she's not grinning in this picture right here, where the flowers are covering up her mouth. You can still make it out. Her mouth is closed, and she's not even really smiling. So this is one of those videos where I'm more posing a question than anything else, but I did want to cover all the bases first, because like I said, when I do videos that are a little more out there, sometimes like this, I'll have some people just automatically taking the most basic explanation they can and just sticking to that till the very end. But we are living in a time where a lot of crazy things are happening. There's a lot of spiritual manifestations popping out all over the place. So it's interesting to me that this young lady, without realizing it, actually catch an image of the Jezebel spirit that runs loose through so many people right now on the planet. And I'll leave you with that. I just wanted to share this. I thought it was interesting. It's also a great subject. Spirit photography is very interesting to me. And I'll leave it to you to judge on what you think about this. So thanks for checking out the video, guys. Take care of yourselves out there, and I'll talk to you real soon.